and I have a note from the jury saying they are having some problem hearing the witness clearly, so if you could perhaps direct your voice in this direction and slow down. You may not believe this, but you have a slight Missouri accent that may be New Jersey here. But once again, it's not, I'm sure New Jersey accents sound pretty weird to you. Thank you. Very good. Mr. Morrison, I know you have a couple of areas going to go into. Very good,
Right.
thank you.
I'll come over here so the witness talks in this direction.
Very good.
Earlier we spoke about your interviews with Mr. Randall, or Officer Randall of the Vernon County Sheriff's Department. Recollect our conversations about it?
Yes, sir.
In those conversations, do you have a recollection of telling Officer Randall that at some point in time the individuals, and particularly Mr. Stangeland, had provided you with a towel?
I don't recall, that's I probably did. When they got me up off the floor, before they tied me in the chair, there was, Mr. Stangeland was there and Mr. Swarns was there. And there was, one of them got some ice out of the refrigerator and there was a towel. And that's probably the way it's handled, but I don't recall that conversation. But yes, they were both right there when that happened.
And wasn't it a fact that you were also given a drink of water because you requested a drink of water?
That's correct.
And wasn't it Mr. Stangeland who gave you the water?
I believe it was Mr. Swarns, but again, my recollection is a little fuzzy about that. I know that I wasn't allowed to touch the bottle. They put it to my mouth and poured it in.
And then the bottle ended up on the counter in the house there.
Yes, and they gave my wife a drink also.
Right. You and your wife both were restrained with zip ties, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember where the zip ties were when you first saw them?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. Do you remember telling Officer Randall that the zip ties had been removed from Andrew Waddell's cargo pants pocket?
Oh, yes, I understand the question. Yeah, yes, they seem to be on his body someplace.
Okay. So it was Waddell who supplied the zip ties that were used on both you and your wife?
That's correct.
Mr. Mueller asked you a question about your concerns that led you to go to Kansas City with your wife after your meeting with Officer Randall in January 2010. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that your concerns were based upon information provided to you, and in particular, reference was made to the Hells Angels, correct?
Correct.
And did you have a particular fear of the Hells Angels?
I've never had any experience with them, but I've read a lot about them, and it would be a fool not to be afraid of them.
So it was certainly a factor in why you were fearful and went to Kansas City with your bride, as you referred to her.
Yes, so that in part, yes, but I was fearful about the whole situation. Once I learned that most of all the suspects were in the Vernon County area, I assumed that they had friends and people around them, so that was also my concern.
At that point in time, were you aware of whether or not Billy Barger had been arrested or not?
I was not aware of that, no.
Do you recollect that Officer Randall advised you that they were looking for the fourth individual, particularly Barger?
My recollection was I was just asked if I knew him. There wasn't any other discussion about that. Did I know him? And I didn't.
When Mr. Stangeland walked past you in the courtroom in Vernon County and indicated to you that I'm sorry, is that basically what happened?
Yeah, he limped that. He was shackled. And he walked by and he just turned and looked and said, "I'm sorry."
And did you take that as being remorse on his part?
I took it more as confirmation that he was the one that shot me, but at the same time, it was a gesture.
You accepted it?
I had no reason not to.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Very good. Prosecutor?
You indicated, I think they you say that he licked it, the apology? Did you hear it? Was it audible? Or did you?
No, it was not audible.
Mr. Morrison just asked you about the towel
Yes.
that was provided. And I just want to make sure we have the timing correct. How long after you were shot were you given the towel?
At least 20 minutes.
Were you concerned that you might bleed to death?
Yes, I was.
How much blood did you lose during that 20-minute period?
A significant amount. I don't know how much. I know they pumped a bunch of fluids in me when they were taking me to the hospital, but I don't recall.
The matter with Mr. Waddell, that matter was resolved in Missouri, is that correct?
Yes.
And I don't want you to get into the terms or the precise nature of the disposition, but did Mr. Waddell plead guilty?
Yes.
And was he sentenced?
Yes.
You indicated during your testimony that you felt that he was a follower,
Yes, sir.
is that correct? Even with that, is it your position, do you feel that he was a victim? You yourself believe him to be a victim? In the sense that he was not responsible for what he did?
I believe he was responsible for what he did. And just a minute. I still have a difficult time with that, simply because the whole time he was in our house, he had a gun to the back of my wife's head. And so I have that kind of imprinted in my thought process. So it's difficult for me to answer that, whether he was a victim or not. But at the same time, being seen justice served was somewhat of a beginning of a closure. But I must say, it still upsets me tremendously when I think about that.
That's all I have.
All right, I have one question, Judge.
Yes.
Did you learn, Mr. Scammell, that it was Mr. Waddell who poisoned your dogs?
Yes, I did.
And did that play into your conversation today in court as to what your feelings were concerning him?
I think certainly my feelings toward Mr. Wagle has to do with the whole night in our house and the days before when our dogs were poisoned and our phone lines were cut. That whole process.
Thank you.
I just have a follow-up just to that one question. Indicated that you learned it was Mr. Waddell who poisoned your dogs, correct?
Yes,
And you also testified that you felt he was a follower,
Yes.
that was just following orders from others, correct?
yes,
Now, there's been some discussion about what each person did in connection with this home invasion. Who tied up your wife, who pointed a gun, who shot you, who poisoned the dogs, who cut the phone lines, etc. Was it your impression that all three of these individuals were working together with a common purpose?
yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Nothing further.
All right. You may return to Missouri with our thanks and watch your stepping down. Thank you for coming out to New Jersey.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Good to see you. Are we in a position to bring on another witness, or do we need a few moments to set it up?
Can I consult with counsel? Judge, I believe we may have a legal issue to
Okay.
discuss right before we call that particular witness. It should be brief.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, frequently, I can see you already